If I can be moved to tears by a woman who glorifies and romanticizes murder, then you can pretty much be assured that something strange happens in this series. Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. It is Thursday, so technically it is a rated R Thursday, but instead of talking about one book today, I'm going to talk about an entire series of books, beginning with a book that's pretty popular, The Girl in 6E by A.R. Torrey. Now, this was an originally self-published book, and I don't know if the intention was to make it a standalone, but it is relatively successful as a standalone if a reader wanted to stop with this first book. However, it was followed up by Do Not Disturb, and most recently, If You Dare. A.R. Torrey is a pseudonym for erotic romance author Alessandra Torrey, and she actually has her own YouTube channel, so I will link Alessandra's content down below. So the series follows Deanna Madden. She is a reclusive cam girl. If you're not familiar with what a cam girl is, it is basically the internet's version of a stripper or a prostitute. Through webcam live streaming and a hefty per minute charge, Deanna Madden will enact any client's wildest fantasy or fetish for the release of certain tensions. That's about as G-rated of an explanation as I can give for something that is definitely rated R. This entire series is considered an erotic thriller. So Deanna Madden, or Jess Riley, as she's known to her clients via cam girls, has locked herself in her apartment, 6E, and when we catch up with her, she's been there for 3 years. That's 3 years without setting foot in the outside world and without having any human contact in a face-to-face capacity. The reason that Deanna has locked herself in is because she has extreme homicidal urges. She fantasizes about committing murder, and not to anyone specifically. She basically just wants to kill. I guess you could consider Deanna a killer with a conscience because she has taken extreme steps to isolate her from any potential victims. She pays another tenant in prescription drugs to lock her in every single night. And while her door remains unlocked during the day, it's only because Deanna figures if somebody wanders in uninvited, she has a legitimate excuse to kill them. I went into The Girl in 6E actually quite prepared to hate Deanna. I didn't think that I would like the protagonist of this series. I thought instead that I would find it fascinating, and that would be my motivation to read it. In reality, though, throughout the course of this first book, we do realize that some things happened to Deanna. Her mental condition is, I believe, dependent upon some traumatic events from her past. It makes her a little more likable, and the fact that she does have that conscience. She does have some sort of moral compass. She knows that it is wrong to kill people. She just can't help but want to. Throughout this book, I warmed to Deanna. The conflict of this book comes when Deanna meets a new client via cam girls who wants her to role play in a very inappropriate way. Each time that Deanna speaks with him, his requests get a little stranger and a little more inappropriate. Deanna is very uncomfortable with some of the things that he asks her to do, including age play, which involves Deanna pretending to be younger than legal age. Because she's a little bit creeped out by this client, she does ask her hacker friend Mike to look into him via his IP address. Now Mike uncovers his name, his whereabouts, and Deanna feels a slight sense of comfort, at least knowing a little bit more about this weirdo. But when a young girl goes missing in her client's general area, Deanna suddenly realizes that maybe he's not just role-playing, that maybe he cannot rein in his desires in the same way that she does. And so she makes it her mission to leave the sanctity of 6E and hunt him down. I won't go to any more detail about that particular plotline because it would get into spoilers, but I will talk a little bit about the other secondary characters that appear in the book. There are 4 key people that first appear in The Girl in 6E that you will need to know for the rest of these books. The first is the UPS guy, Jeremy. So obviously, Deanna doesn't leave her house. She orders everything that she needs via internet, and it's delivered right to her door. And the UPS guy becomes a major player when, after 3 years, he knocks on Deanna's door, and for the first time ever, she does not answer. And like an idiot, he goes ahead and enters her apartment uninvited. Again, not going to go into any more detail than that. What happens between Deanna and Jeremy, you will just have to read the book to find out. But he is important to all 3 novels. The next secondary character that you'll want to take notice and pay attention of is the tenant in 6G, that is Simon. This is the tenant that Deanna pays in prescription medication to lock her in every night. He is a drug addict, and the threat of taking his drugs away is enough to keep her pent up, to show up when he's supposed to show up and do what he's supposed to do. The third secondary character is our hacker friend, Mike. Now, originally he started out as a client of Deanna's, and while they dabble still occasionally, he is there for information. He has helped her kind of upgrade her system to the point where she's safe. He's buried her real identity and done everything he could to make her appear to be Jess Riley to all of these internet people that she comes in contact with. He has access to any bit of information about Deanna, including her money, her whereabouts. He also plays an increasingly important role throughout the series, and you'll want to pay attention to him. Lastly, we have Deanna's psychiatrist. Now, she has 2 psychiatrists. The first she speaks with about her career. He helps her sort of keep the camming aspects of her life in perspective. But the more important of the 2 psychiatrists is Derek. Derek is there to help Deanna with her actual urges to kill. If it weren't for Deanna's isolation, I don't know if all of her interactions with these people would be as important, but as it is, these are the only people in her life that know anything about her. And as much as they don't know, they are key people in Deanna's existence. If you ask me, the first book is all about laying the groundwork. Yes, it's a good book, and yes, it's very interesting. However, I wouldn't classify it as something that's incredibly poignant or deep as a standalone, because I thought it was great until I continued in the series and I realized how much further we delve into Deanna as a person. So The Girl in 6E truly does just scratch the surface. But like I said, it can be read as a relatively successful standalone that you will probably enjoy if you can handle the erotic part of the erotic thriller. This book and this series is very explicit, not only in its description of certain acts, but also in its dialogue. So if you can handle that eroticism and that sexually explicit content, then you would probably enjoy The Girl in 6E just for its unique storyline, just for what it puts out there in the world, which is a protagonist that we really shouldn't like, but we do anyway. She's very unapologetic. You don't want to like her. You think she might be bad, but at the end of the day, she's witty and she has a conscience, and she has been victimized, and so you can't help but let her in just a little bit. On to the second book. It is Do Not Disturb. And if you haven't read the first book, I will try to keep this as spoiler free as possible. But if you absolutely 100% do not want any indication of what possibly happened in The Girl in 6E, you might want to hit the road right now. Do Not Disturb is the continuation of the story. However, things with the antagonist in The Girl in 6E were wrapped up, so we have a whole new antagonist and thrilling plot line for this book. The only true continuation is delving further into Deanna's character and witnessing some of Deanna's growth. Now, I will say that this is my least favorite book of the series. It is much more explicit than the first. In fact, I think it even borders on gratuitous. Having read the first book, I know what Deanna is. I know what she does for a living. I've had some of it graphically explained to me. I'm not by any means a prude or overly modest. That said, it still was a little bit like, okay, we get it. We know what she's doing. And unlike The Girl in 6E, where there is no actual physical sex, there is in this book, and that may have been the thing that pushed the camming scenes over the top. Didn't have to go there, basically. The other thing about this book that made my reading experience a little bit difficult is I hated the antagonist. I didn't think it was possible to be any more disgusted by an antagonist than I was when it came to Ralph in The Girl in 6E. But Do Not Disturb's antagonist, Marcus, again, he's a client that Deanna encounters in one of her camming sessions, and he is deplorable. I cannot stand this guy. I don't know how to explain it. There's no excuse, and there's no forgiving the actions of Ralph in the first book. I think he warred a little bit with restraint. I think that he knew right from wrong. He knew what he was doing was wrong. It made him completely different than this asshole, Marcus, who was arrogant and wanted to exercise his control and domination over women in horrific ways, and thought that it was okay and thought that it should be acceptable. So kudos to A.R. Torrey for writing someone that I hated so much, because that's part of being a good author. Deanna is a reclusive woman who eats diet food. She's described as being really tiny, almost skinny to the point of emaciated, because, you know, she hasn't had chocolate in 3 years like the rest of us. But Deanna definitely has a little bit of overconfidence when it comes to killing. She thinks she won't experience any troubles when it comes to killing men, grown men. Now, she's knocked down a few pegs, definitely, early on in The Girl in 6E. And we realize that Deanna has that overinflated sense of ability. Even so, I think the major conflict between Deanna and the antagonist in this book, for all the buildup that was done with Marcus, for all of the hate we channeled into this guy, I was left a little unimpressed by the climactic events of Do Not Disturb. The third book, If You Dare, is where it definitely came all together for me. The first book was groundbreaking. The last book ruined me. So like I said, I went into this series prepared to hate Deanna. By the end of the third book, I was bawling my eyes out. The resolution was so tragic and sad, and I don't want to give anything away. I was crying pretty hard. I suddenly felt who Deanna was in this book. I finally got it. I finally understood. And actually, because of this third book, I was able to recognize some of myself in Deanna. Not the murderous part, so I'm going to need everybody to just relax. Not a killer. And after reading this third book, the point became crystal clear. And it has a lot to do with vulnerability. Both Deanna's quest to remain invulnerable, even though she doesn't realize she's doing it. Like, she doesn't want to be vulnerable to anyone. That's why she's created this whole other persona for herself that she hides behind, that she operates within, because there is so much of her actual self that's broken, and she can't afford for it to break anymore. And then keeping others from being vulnerable to her. Vulnerability is uncomfortable and leads to intimacy that we're uncomfortable with, which is another thing that Deanna never had and experiences in this series, a level of intimacy that breaks her in its stark contrast to her chosen life. I think that Deanna isn't a character that becomes extremely changed throughout the course of 3 books. However, I feel like Deanna knows herself a lot better by the end of 3 books. That's her journey. And that's our journey as the reader. You know, we learn what motivates her and what scares her and why she makes the decisions that she makes. And we understand it and we sympathize with it. At least I did as the reader. And I hope I'm not alone in that, because it would be a real shame. But I think that this last book, If You Dare, makes everything that happened in the 2 books prior worth every minute. Yeah, you can stop at The Girl at 6E if you want to, but man, are you gonna miss out on some feels, because this one has all the feels. It is the book that I read the fastest. It is the book that I liked the most. A.R. Torrey manipulates present and past events, alternating between them. We're left wondering what has happened to some of our beloved characters that we've been following. Revelations are made. It's just, nothing is as it seems. A.R. Torrey is a really good writer, and she writes with this bravery that I don't possess as a writer and that I rarely see in books. She's brave. To me, this series is groundbreaking because of its content, because it is so unapologetic, and it is so controversial. You have to have an open mind. You have to like stuff that's different. This series is a risk. I'm not gonna lie. I would take these sorts of risks over and over with books, especially when, you know, it's someone so close to home that I can support, someone else that's on YouTube, someone that I know was a self-pubbed author. I will take these kind of risks, and obviously the publisher was willing to take those kind of risks as well. So I would recommend this book as an experience. I'm not going to recommend this book as your must-read entertainment book of the summer. Every once in a while, though, there's just a book or a series that can't be ignored. And for me, that's what this Girl in 6E series is. There is my Rated R Thursday review on the entire series for The Girl in 6E by A.R. Torrey. If you read one or all of these books, please leave your comments and thoughts about them down below. I would love to hear what other people think. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you're new here, maybe consider subscribing. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you all very soon.